From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, April the 15th, the year of our Lord, 2015. And now, here they are, live and in person, Jim and Rich.
Live is questionable, at least on my part, but I suppose we are here in person.
We're in person, definitely in person.
I don't know about live for me. That's my only question.
I don't know. You're looking alive.
I'm looking alive. I need a little more coffee.
Yeah, put some coffee down to your gullet, will you?
Make it stronger next time, John.
John. See, look at John provides everything, and you're going to criticize him now.
I need something that I can crunch.
Crunch. Oh,
That's
no,
right.
no doubt.
That's right. The doctor of the dial's in there again, just keeping us.
He's the best.
Keeping us fired up.
John DeVita is the best. All right, Jim, we don't know what the heck we're talking about.
Oh, we'll find something. Hey, Cubs are reasonably
Did they win again?
Yes,
yesterday?
they did.
They're 4-2.
They're 4-2, and it was a come from behind victory.
Oh my goodness! I'm starting to shake all over.
You got your
shaking all over.
John is going. You two are just the weirdest SOBs I've ever. I used the letters, John. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't say it out loud. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay, Father, you can go back to bed.
Yeah. False alarm, Father. Sorry.
Oh, gosh.
I looked at something, too. Looked down in the minors and saw something that, of course, now I won't be able to find the article, but with the fact that I guess Olt is injured, and Olt is injured. Who else? LaStella is apparently injured. You got Alcantara playing third. Chris Bryant early on in Iowa. First 4 games, 5 for 16 with 2 home runs, hitting about 316. Addison Russell's hitting 389. If we have problems down there, there is hope. There is hope available.
How'd the Sox do yesterday?
They didn't play last night.
Oh, they didn't play?
I think they were off last night. And, I know the Sox fans, there were some Sox fans that had to be talked off the ledge after the first 4 games of the year. Of course, those were all the members of the Fire Robin Ventura board on Facebook.
I'm getting ready for the Subway Series.
Hey, you know what? It can always happen.
Oh well,
it could always happen. It's probably unlikely, but you never know.
Hey, anything can happen, Jim.
Yeah. What did you think of? Did you get any chance to see? Even though it's a week past, did you get any chance to see the Final Four? Any of the Final Four?
I did see. I had to get up early the next morning, but I did see quite a bit of the championship game.
Good ball game.
Yeah, very good ball game. I thought the Final Four teams were really great teams. Interesting, all veteran coaches, all probably future Hall of Fame coaches. And now, what I found interesting, I think I mentioned to you, Jim, that in reading a little bit about this, they're already talking about the Sun-Times. There was already talking about next year.
Mm-hmm.
And, Kentucky is going to lose 7 players, but the guy from the Sun-Times, they're going to reload and have no problem. But Duke is losing, 1 player, maybe 2? And he's thinking they're going to struggle.
2 at least.
Now, I have to say this. What did you think of, and I don't want to really, I'm not doing this to knock this young guy, but what did you think of Jahlil Okafor?
I think he could use another year.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And you brought up a name yesterday or the day before when we were texting back and forth. Kansas, Alexander.
Oh, Cliff Alexander.
Cliff Alexander. Do you think he'll be drafted? Cliff Alexander has about 490 minutes of playing time in Division I. That's all he played.
Yeah, I mean, he did you look? I mean, not that everybody knows if they listen to the show at all that I'm not a super big stats guy, but when you looked at his numbers, I'm thinking if you're going to be an NBA player, other than say maybe a point guard where you're not going to have super numbers, you're supposed to be a scorer, or maybe a center where your rebounds are important. This guy averaged less than 8 points a game.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought it was 9 points, but it might be less than 8 points a game.
And Rick Morrissey, though, was saying, I didn't read his column because I didn't want to really barf right there in the Fanny and Schmo's bakery. But
Morrissey can do that.
Yeah. But
John like that.
he was saying he was saying that Alexander should the rule now he's totally reversing himself. Even though he's not coaches who are embracing the one and done, now he's going to say in Cliff Alexander's case he should have been able to go right to the NBA.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the one and done.
I'm tired. Fine. And we talked earlier, and maybe we can get into that today about how everybody's marketing leagues as being better than they were 30 years ago or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things with the NBA. And if you're going to take a bunch of high school kids, you're going to have a bunch of immature players, and it's going to have the same bad reputation it had 35 years ago before Magic Johnson and Larry Bird came into the league and really brought the golden era of NBA basketball.
You know what I say? Some of these guys, I never saw Cliff Alexander play. I didn't even see him play in college. I did catch a Kansas game where he was just going to the bench, I think, with 4 fouls in the only Kansas game I caught all year. But years ago, the summer league, basketball league that's usually played at Malcolm X, Malcolm X was under construction, and they played the games at Triton.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to quite a few of the games, and there was a guy at the time that was a big public league star by the name of Ephraim Winters.
Yeah, I remember Ephraim Winters.
And there was a couple guys that were sitting around us.
Illinois, right?
Yes. And a couple guys sitting around us that we got to know a little bit. And there's man, this guy's a future All-American and a future pro. And I'm like, guys, I hate to burst your bubble, and I'm not a big expert, but I watched 3 or 4 games here, and I still can't pick out who Ephraim Winters is on the floor when he's with his teammates there. And I'm thinking, I mean, if this guy is that good, he's got to stand out like a sore thumb. And he didn't. And Ephraim Winters was a good college basketball player. I distinctly remember he was third team All Big Ten his senior year.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think about a guy like a Cliff Alexander, and I'm not saying that's the way he's going to end up, but a lot of these guys are so super hyped by the media these days, and they're really I'm not saying they're not good. They're good, but they're not that good where they're going to be good pros. You know what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
Jim?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. SI had a little piece in their article regarding the Final Four and the championship about they said the season has ended, but it's never too early to start thinking about which teams will be at the top of the polls in the fall. And Seth Davis is saying Virginia. The Cavs lose one key senior while bringing back an experienced lineup that features 6'6" swingman Justin Anderson, a National Player of the Year candidate. North Carolina, number 2. Justin Jackson apparently has decided to stay, so that can be a big plus. Third, he's calling Kentucky. Another elite recruiting class arrives, but the Cats will probably start a lineup light on freshmen, headlined by sophomore guards Tyler Ulis and Devin Booker.
Poitras should be back, too.
Yeah, Kansas is 4th. Unlike in recent years, the Jayhawks have most of their rotation coming back. Look for 6'8" sophomore guard Svatoslav Mikolak. Sounds, if I'm saying that right, to make a big improvement. Maryland, 2 great pieces of news recently. Sophomore point guard Melo Trimble is coming back, and 6'10" freshman's here's a great name. 6'10" freshman stud Diamond Stone.
Hey, there we go.
Is signing up. Iowa State lost four. They have four of their top six scorers returning. Duke, Jaleel Okafor and Justice Winslow are likely NBA bound, but if Tyus Jones returns, he'll have two freshmen to join him. 6'10 forward Chase Jeter and 6'5 guard Luke Kennard. Michigan State senior guard Denzel Valentine, he really impressed me. More I watched him during this. He could be a preseason All-American, will play alongside West Virginia transfer Aaron Harris, a junior. Indiana, freshman Thomas Bryant, a 6'10 power forward from Rochester, New York, will fill the interior void and allow the Big Ten's best perimeter core to flourish. Oklahoma, of 6'4 guard Buddy Hield, the Big 12's Player of the Year, returns for his senior season. The Sooners will again challenge for the conference crown.
Well, those top two teams that you mentioned,
Yeah.
Virginia and North Carolina, I actually got a chance to see both of them play a couple times this year, and they really left me cold, to be honest with you. Virginia,
North Carolina, yeah, I wasn't really impressed. I got a chance to see a little bit of them this year.
Virginia, a tough defensive team. I didn't see anybody who really impressed me offensively. Still got to score points, obviously. And North Carolina, just the announcers tried to make a few of the guys on the North Carolina team out to be more than what I was seeing them to be as I watched the game. And again, I don't watch the games with the same practiced eye as say a guy like Jay Billis who really knows the game. But at the same time, again, nobody really stood out to me. So I didn't like either of those teams. Now, some of the teams further down the list, obviously, I think the guy somehow, Calipari, always seems to make it work, so I wouldn't doubt that Kentucky will be back up there. And Krzyzewski, obviously, his track record speaks for itself, same as Calipari's, so I know Duke will be back up there. And you know what always puzzles me, Jim?
And you always know that if it's March, Tom Izzo will have the Spartans somewhere in there.
Now, the interesting, you mentioned Indiana in that group.
Yeah.
And I really think Tom Crane is an outstanding coach.
Crane.
Huh?
Crane.
Crane. You said Crane.
You said Crane.
Yeah, it is Crane.
I thought it was
That's the
Crane.
way they say his name.
No.
Crean, Crane.
No.
But at any rate, he's, I think, a very good coach. Really took Indiana at a point where they were really in the pits and brought them back up real quickly. And I've seen a few things in the papers where they're saying he may, be on the slippery slope.
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking, how is that?
Yeah. I didn't really understand that one either. Because I thought, he's had a great reputation. He had a great reputation at Marquette.
Yeah.
And then went down there and had to clean up the mess at Indiana after, who was that? Kelvin.
Yeah, I know. Can't think of his name.
Kelvin Sampson?
Yeah, Sampson.
Made a mess of things down there in his brief time. Speaking of Indiana and Indiana coaches, do you see Bobby Knight was let go at ESPN?
Oh, he was?
Yes.
Wow.
The NIT game, I think the NIT game was his final game with ESPN because he really hasn't been bringing much to the table of late.
Well, I can
including screaming at somebody who was getting in his way in a game earlier in the season on the air, and insisting on referring to Kentucky not by name but the team from the Southeast Conference.
I think Bobby Knight, I would really like to hear Bobby Knight on a broadcast where he didn't have to...
with the filters off?
With the filters off, where he really said what he thought, as far as seeing the action on the court. Because I have a feeling he probably wouldn't be that happy. I mean, knowing that, knowing the type of perfectionist that he was as a coach and what he wanted out of his players, I don't think that too many teams that he sees would pass muster.
No.
In terms of what he thinks basketball should be.
Yeah.
And I probably would end up agreeing with him because I I remember reading, can't remember who wrote this, but just talking about the way the game is played today. You have a bunch of guys who stand around pretty much, and then they wait for somebody to go one-on-one.
Are you talking the college game or are you talking the pro game?
I'm really talking both.
In general?
In general. You see a team like a Notre Dame this year, which was really, I love watching them play because it reminded me of the old Celtics or the old Knicks where you had a lot of ball movement. You moved the ball around quite a bit.
Wisconsin.
Like
that, too.
But, what's amazing, Jim, and I'm changing direction here a little bit, Kentucky, who you would think would be a bunch of pampered brats because everybody is saying, they're going to be one-and-done guys. But when I watched them play, and I think it was the game they lost, so who was that, Wisconsin?
Yeah.
I mean, they are so tough defensively. I got to say, you could knock John Calipari for whatever reasons you want to knock him, I guess. I really personally don't see it. But I think when you look at it and you think, here are these guys, these young guys who want to eventually be pros, and he's got them buying in. Not only, they only have two guys who average double figures on the whole team, but they also play tough defense and share their minutes. They got 10 guys playing. That's a heck of a coaching job by Calipari. That is an outstanding coaching job. And
I don't think anybody has ever questioned his coaching ability.
But
other than the time when he was coaching in the pros.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I would just say, excellent job. And the other thing is, I think the people on his team, regardless of what their motivation is, have to be really good people. Because for you to say, hey, I'm a star in high school, I might be Mr. Basketball in whatever state, I'm a big shot, and now I'm going to come here and agree to score less points, play less minutes, really have to play defense. That's a great coaching job. There's no question about that. And Kentucky, I think, just basically ran out of, put it this way, the odds were against them.
The odds were against them, and if anybody came in there ready to be picked off, ready to lose, it was Kentucky. And obviously when Notre Dame took them to the wire in that game, before they came into the Final Four, in the regional championship game, it proved Kentucky had some weak points.
Well, I think about, in a sense, I think about like what you're doing right now. You're coming down to crunch time and tax season, so you're doing one return after another, and pretty soon they sort of probably start to blend together a little bit.
Yeah. I have no idea at some point in time about this time. I have no idea what's going on.
And I think you could say the same for a team like Kentucky. Okay, you've gone seriously 38-30. All of a sudden, you're thinking, the games start to, even though you know that they're important games, they're just sort of, wow, it's another game. It's
another game. It's hard to focus on it. You just said coming down to crunch time. I said I'm expecting this one guy to come in, and it'll be about 4:00 tomorrow, and he'll have his laptop, and we're going to start to go over things, and he's going to start to begin with, well, what if I would have done this?
Okay.
What if I would have done that? What if this happened? What if that? And I'll reach to the point where I'll be going, did it happen? No. Then no what ifs. I said, then what if? What if? And I'm going to go Samuel L. Jackson and Pulp Fiction on him. I'm going to be looking at him going, say what if one more time.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I was thinking about the other day, Jim?
Samuel L. Jackson?
You and I were texting back and forth, and I made the comment that I excluded the NHL, but I said Major League Baseball, the NFL, and the NBA are. How would I say it?
I'll find the text.
Are are basically, poor copies of what they were, say, 40 years ago.
I will find the text. And
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate that.
Hey,
You're
that's what I'm here for.
I'll tell you, he is. You know what? Thank God he's. We have an organized accountant here, John. Otherwise I'd be a little.
I'm
a little nervous about your tax return.
I'm a little disorganized at this point in time. I love your comment I said when we were talking about Cliff Alexander, I said if he declared for the draft, he's foolish. He really needs more experience. Your comment, he did this week. He may have no hats to wear on draft day. I said, yeah, but the only thing he could wear would be a McDonald's crew hat.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
What was the comment you made? Brant Aaliyah, that one kind of went. Who that?
Yeah, well, Brant.
You get these names that come in
Sure.
out of the.
I was going to text you. I knew you were busy yesterday.
And I got confused between Art Powell and Art Shell.
Yeah, you did. I knew you were really having some rough times with the tax returns when you got those two guys mixed up. Art Powell's. I did mention this to you. Art Powell, who was a wide receiver, basically for the Oakland Raiders in the early '60s, passed away this past week, and an excellent player. And one of the interesting things that what I would have gotten wrong is I would have told people, yeah, and he was a professional boxer too, but that was actually his brother Charlie, who played professional football, I believe, for the 49ers, and also was a pro boxer, and fought the young Cassius Clay prior to him becoming Muhammad Ali. So he was one of the guys that, one of the stepping stone guys that you get as you have a young fighter
tomato cans
progressing. Yeah,
yeah.
Although I would never get in there with one of those tomato cans and let him throw a punch at me.
That's right. Your comment that you made was MLB, NFL, and NBA being marketed as better than they were 40 years ago is a scam. And my response back was MLB for sure, NBA probably. I think we could probably argue on the NFL that I think you get it with the quality of the players that are coming out, maybe questionable character. But there's a lot of great players, and I don't know, how well the teams from 40 years ago could stack up against these players now.
Well, that's an interesting. Actually, that's an interesting argument because what I tell people, you hear a lot of people say that. Well, you know what? You had 230-pound offensive guards and 260, 270-pound defensive tackle was probably about right. But I would say to them is, okay, take those guys and put them in today's era and give them the benefit of all of the training and nutrition and whatever, and they would be much bigger guys. My question would be, or my point would be, I just think they were better football players in general. I mean, if you take the NFL,
are you saying like more well-rounded in terms of skills?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because today's players are.
Right.
The other thing is, I was thinking about this, and you would probably get these numbers quicker than I had. I got the simple number. When we were kids, there was 12 NFL teams prior to them expanding to 12 or 14.
Prior to you talking prior to the Cowboys?
Prior to the Cowboys and Vikings, 12, right?
12.
And at one time, that was a 33-man roster.
Right.
So you had 300, you had maybe close to 400 NFL players. Today, you have over 30 teams with a 50-some man roster.
53-man roster.
Which puts the number of pro football players in the thousands, to a couple thousand at least. And so I don't see how, and you know what, throw the NHL in there too. I mean, I like the overall style of play in the NHL. I think the NHL player is pretty much the same as the old NHL player. It's the closest to what it was 40 years ago. But at the same time, that league has expanded obviously drastically, and so it's got to be watered down. Once you start to get more teams, you're not going to
have the same quality of players. 1,600. If you take a 53-man roster, 32 teams in the NBA or in the and National Football League?
If you say so. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
That's 1,696 players if there's 32 teams.
Okay, so it's less than 2,000.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you remember the name Corky Withrow?
Yeah.
You ever heard of Corky Withrow?
Yeah.
Hey,
Basketball.
No.
Basketball?
No, you're thinking of Corky Calhoun, I think. Maybe.
Oh, okay. Well, Corky Withrow.
Corky Withrow was.
Hey, I got Art Shell and Art.
He was basically a career minor leaguer and in the '60s, and St. Louis Cardinals property. Might have played a little bit with the Cardinals, but I guess what I would say is there was a guy who was a power guy. Had good numbers in the minors, never had exactly what they were looking for him to be a major leaguer for any period of time. And I'm thinking, this is the difference. That guy today, Withrow, would be a major leaguer. And I think that's what you're seeing all the way around. You're seeing a lot of teams with, and I'm not knocking the guys. Again, they're good players, but not up to the caliber that you would have needed to be to play in the majors in 1965.
All right. Well, by then you had already had 65. You had 4 more teams added from when you and I were kids.
Mm-hmm.
Right? 65? Yeah. Yeah, they expanded in 61. The AL expanded in 61, and the National League expanded in 62. And they, at that point in time, there was always the discussion then. Well, now you got another 200 players in the league.
Well, I remember in 61.
Excuse me, 100 players in the league.
Even in 61, when Roger Maris hit the 61 homers, there was some talk of, because I believe the American League may have had their expansion team before the National.
Yeah, they did it in 61.
And there was some talk that Maris benefited from that, which he probably did, I would think. I mean, you're talking about, I don't know, let's just say 20 additional pitchers over what the norm had been. So there's guys who normally the prior year would have been in the minors that would have been in the majors. I mean, he hit his 61st off of Tracy Stallard. And although Tracy Stallard, that was Boston Red Sox.
Yeah,
and
Tracy Stallard was already in the majors prior to that. I would say he would have been nothing more than a journeyman, but he had major league experience.
Right.
He was, he was one of those guys that you'd always look at and say, well, he's just he's a roster fill-in. He wasn't a late season call-up or anything like that.
No, not at all.
No.
But I think that the idea is that all of this has been watered down. You look at the NFL or the NHL and the NBA. I think they've been helped a bit by the fact that quite a few European players now, which has helped a bit.
I think that is one of the things that really helped the NHL more. That there was more of an adoption of the European game.
Mm-hmm.
The European style of play, where you had the passing, you had the shooting, you had the more wide-open offense, instead of the dump the puck into the zone and go bang somebody against the board.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. You go back and watch, if anybody wants to go and look at some interesting old clips, you go onto YouTube and find clips from hockey games from the 1959, 1960, and watch the style of play compared to what you see today. Of course, most of those clips involve, fights in the days when the benches would clear.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
But you look at the players and you look at the style of play leading up to that point. It's a really, really different game back then. And I think you have players now that have helped the both leagues because you have marquee players that everyone wants to watch.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your LeBron James.
Right.
You've got, even though he's old and on his last legs and injured, you had your Kobe Bryant that people would want to watch. In the NHL, you've got Kane, you've got the Blackhawks, you've got Sidney Crosby. You've got players that people are interested in seeing. And they might turn it on then. there are teams that are really awful. There are teams that are really awful. Buffalo is a really, really awful team. Cost our coach his job this year.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still, people will watch because, ratings will go up if the Blackhawks are on.
Well, yeah, you know
let's hold that thought. Bottom of the hour. Let's take a station break. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, April the 15th, the year of our Lord, 2015, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now, back to Jim and Rich.
Jim,
okay. Let's get back to that.
Would you rather be on any other station than the hometown network?
Hey, this is
no way.
This is home.
This is home.
This is home.
Definitely.
We're on the we're in the hometown network.
I have to say,
and we're on the small but mighty 89.
I have to say this again, John DeVita. John, can I ask you, how many shows are you doing from here right now again?
Oh, about 12.
12 shows.
Yeah. And they all wind up over on
every one of them.
Every one of them winds up on RHS.
Yeah, every one of them winds up on WRHS, and every one of them winds up on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And this evening at 6:15 this morning, we'll be doing Keeping It Real with Frankie D.
Frankie D!
Jim, we'll go back to what we were talking about, but I was going to say, Paul Furkin called me on Sunday, and we talked, and I said, Furk, I've told you this before, but I so admire the fact, you were a guy from Leiden. You went to East Leiden High School. You came to a small town, Norwich, and
from a small town.
From a small town, but I mean, your hometown to a different town that you really basically had no ties to, and you decided that you're going to do the best you could possibly do, and look what you've done. I mean, you're honored and in various ways, and it's well deserved. But I would say the same thing about John DeVita. You know what, John? We're in John's basement. He's built a studio here, and he's done the very best he can with what he has at hand here. And I think my hat's off to him as well, because that's outstanding. It's people who do those jobs that are, you're never going to grab a headline. You're never going to be a famous person. But those are the building blocks of our society, and it's a great thing. Really, my hat's off to you, John. Yeah.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure, and I wait every other Tuesday at 8:30 in the morning to be here with you, you two gentlemen. You're one of the best friends in my life.
Gentlemen, that's a question. It's a questionable term for us, but thank you just the same, John. As I look at your sign up there, it says no smoking, no drinking, no eating, no farts in the studio.
Yeah, there we go.
Do I get in trouble for saying that, John?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, it says the boss, so that means you, so I guess it's okay.
I was going to say, though, when you think about what's going on today, you were talking about Buffalo, and I'm thinking, what? I would go see a Buffalo Sabres Edmonton Oilers game, because I love sports.
You appreciate the game.
But I could also see it from the point of view, when I say it's a scam, I guess for me, who considers myself a purist, it's a scam.
Okay.
But from the point of view of the business that's being run, whatever league you want to talk about, I think it's necessary, because actually my feeling is there's not enough real fans out there. So you have to get people to be interested, to turn on the TV, to come to the games. And the way you do that is, just the way the old carnival barkers did. You hype the game.
Are we essentially seeing that with the hype of Chris Bryant to come on the Cubs?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I just I think there's a genuine feeling that he should be here. He's earned that. That spot. And again,
I think
there's the flip side. You know,
it's a
what we
business.
talked about before, the business side of it.
That's right. That's right.
And to me, I guess what I really regret is although I think it's needed, I think the business side sort of sometimes becomes an unfortunate part of what we enjoy.
Yeah, and it's not generally none of the games that we watch, although maybe it occurred that way and we were too young to know about it or pay attention to it. But the business side has taken over.
Yeah, well,
and we understand, and I understand that. I understand the importance of Chris Bryant being kept down in the minors for a short period of time so they could get that extra year of control.
I think the thing that really bugs me when I start to think about it is the fact that the business side has taken over to such a great degree is just as much on the players as it is on the as it is on the front office.
As it is on the front office. I mean, Scott Boras can complain all he wants. You know, if he wants to complain, don't complain to the club or to the Cubs. Complain to the union because this was collectively bargained.
Mm-hmm.
And even
that's right.
Even though Chris Bryant is not a member of the union yet, I mean the Cubs are acting within their rights.
You know, the thing where it really kills me though, what's happening today, is at one time there was no doubt that the players in total were underpaid. They should have been paid more. Now, I just saw something the other day where I think it was Mike Pouncey, who's I think he's the center for the Dolphins, or he's an offensive lineman for the Dolphins. He signed, I don't remember how many years, but obviously it's quite a few years, but $50-some million contract.
Jeez.
For an offensive center.
Jeez.
And I'm like, are the owners crazy? And we talk about this once in a while over coffee, and Andy Ronstadt brings up a good point. Andy will say, well, just think, I mean, if the owners didn't have the money to pay, they wouldn't be paying these salaries. So they're making big bucks, which I believe he's right in most cases. But I'm thinking, wait a minute, man. You know what? I used to say, Jim, when Michael Jordan was in the NBA, I used to tell Jim Kelly over coffee, I'd say, pay him whatever, but I'd pay everybody else and the whole league the minimum, because he's basically the big. You could prove he is the drawing card. Okay, when he would come to Atlanta, if they averaged 10,000, they'd get 18 on the night that he was there. Okay?
I think I saw something at one point in time that Michael Jordan, however many years ago, was worth in excess of $90 million to the league because of the benefits that he brought to the other teams.
Yeah, I believe that.
That $90 million. It might be understated, but that number seems to stick in my head.
See, here's where I'd have to go back to the. I'll call it. It's not his only, I'm sure, but I'll say the Bill Veeck philosophy, the fact that you pay the guy who puts the fans in the stands. And I know there's more to it today than just putting fans in the seat. You know, it's a whole different dynamic than that. But I think the fact is that you'll say like a LeBron James, very important guy in the league, because everybody wants to see LeBron James, whether it's coming to the stadium or turning on the TV or buying a LeBron James jersey or gym shoes at the Sports Authority or wherever.
Sure.
So in that case, what Veeck said still holds, although it's not strictly just paid attendees anymore that you're talking about. It is still who is the most marketable person.
Sure.
And there's only going to be a very few of those people. Sure. I mean, how many people are there? How many people in the league would you go pay to see? You name two guys off the top of your head.
Right.
James and Bryant, who are good names, and guys that probably, you'd like to pay to see them play once at least. Go ahead, Jen.
You know, gentlemen, when you just said how much that gentleman makes, 57 something or another, whatever it was, you know, To me, I think that is strictly ridiculous. Because here, these people only play, 5, 6 months out of the year. It's only a sport. The President of the United States, regardless who he is or what party he's in, he doesn't even make nowhere near that amount of money. And he's there 365 days, 24 hours, and he has more responsibility than what these sports people do.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guarantee you that's a lot tougher job than snapping the ball for the Miami Dolphins.
Did you ever hear the old story when Babe Ruth signed $100,000, became the first $100,000 player back in whatever it was, the 20s or the late 20s or the early 30s? Sports writer said to him, he says, Herbert Hoover makes $20,000 a year or less than you.
Yeah.
And Ruth's response was, "Well, I had a better year."
Yeah. Now, where do these people get the money from? From the fans that are going to watch the games?
No, and they get it from TV. That's what's funneling this.
Oh, from a lot of it from TV.
You realize that they talked about that in there's going to be a new TV contract for the NBA, and it's going to be a windfall. That they will have more money to be split up among there, and that's one of the reasons why James only signed a 2-year contract, because he can opt out at the end of that 2 years and renegotiate, because the salary cap is going to increase that much. And it's a business. It's a business. That's what it comes to.
I know my nephew Mark had told us at Easter time when we were together as a family about they went to a Blackhawks game. He came out of there almost spending $500 between the tickets. The 3 boys, or the 4 boys rather, wanted to get something to eat, and the parking. And he says by the time he walked out of there, he says he was almost $500.
I'm sure, John.
Easily.
Easily is right.
Easily. Hey, listen, there's an interesting article, and we chatted a little bit about this. I said I wanted to bring it up.
Thanks, John.
Especially with the draft coming up. By the way, yes, thank you, John. Yeah. I'm looking at the clock, and I got topics on mind here. Especially with the NFL draft coming up. Interesting article, a guy on CBSSports.com. He felt it was in a sports nerdy way. He decided to list the best player taken in each of the 256 draft spots since the 1970 merger. And some of them are interesting as you go along and look at the list. He feels that the best number 1 pick all time, Peyton Manning, edges out Hall of Famers Bruce Smith, Earl Campbell, and John Elway. Can't argue with that. Lawrence Taylor, the number 2 pick. Walter Payton, the number 4 pick. John Hanna was also selected number 4. Since the Bears are going to pick number 7, Adrian Peterson. But it's interesting as we go down the list, as you find some of these players and where some of these people were drafted, and you start to look and you go, wow, he was drafted that low. Here's an interesting one. I didn't even remember this guy. John Beeson, 3-time Pro Bowler, is the only first-team All-Pro ever drafted 25th overall. Dan Deerdorf, the only Hall of Famer drafted 43rd.
Wow.
Dermontti Dawson, the only Hall of Famer drafted 44th. Michael Dean Perry. I forgot about Michael Dean Perry. Michael Dean Perry had a pretty doggone good career. 6-time Pro Bowler. Was twice a first-team All-Pro with the Browns and the Broncos.
I tell you, you forget a lot as these years go by.
Dan Fouts was drafted 64th. The only Hall of Famer drafted 64th.
Wow.
And some of these names, as I was looking through it, Lyle Alzado was 79th. Bill Romanowski, 80th. There's two who had their career because of drugs. Joe Montana was drafted 82nd. John Lynch, John Stallworth, and Emmanuel Sanders were also drafted 82nd. Andre Reed was drafted 86th, and the only thing I remembered about, the only reason I kind of looked at that one is Jackie Slater was both there. Reed and offensive tackle Jackie Slater both made 7 Pro Bowls and are both in the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
You know. Charles Haley, best comment I ever heard about Charles Haley was Matt Millen saying, Charles Haley, go to war with him on the field, total wrecked him off the field. Hall of Famer. He was drafted 96th. Harry Carson of the Giants, Hall of Famer, 105th in the draft.
Wow.
So, you know, and you brought up an interesting point. Love to go back farther.
Yeah, you could go back farther.
Steve Largent was drafted 117th.
Yeah, he was not really highly thought of.
7 Pro Bowls and went over 1,000 yards 8 times. Terry Schmidt, boy, I remember him. He was 121st, played for the Bears.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Webster was 125th. Still remember, I think it was one of the greatest Hall of Fame in acceptance speeches I ever heard was Terry Bradshaw thanking everyone up there, sounding like a preacher, and he finished off his thought was, and I'd give anything to put my hands under Mike Webster's butt one more time. Just interesting.
Who was the best at 256? Jim?
We'll get to that point because there's other interesting Hall of Famers that are along here all the way. I don't know if I picked up all of them, but I was kind of scanning this list, and Harold Carmichael was 161st.
Wow.
You know, Lamar Parrish, the Bengals, was 163rd, cornerback. Some of these players you look at and you think, wow, that's when they were drafted? Shannon Sharp was drafted 192nd.
Wow.
8 Pro Bowls, Hall of Fame, first team All-Pro 4 times, 192nd. Best 199th pick in the history of the NFL?
Oh, you know who this is going to be.
That's right, Tom Brady.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
The only other return specialist, Eddie Brown, is the only other Pro Bowler drafted in the 199th spot. And it doesn't look as though Viking guard Charlie Johnson is going to make a run at Brady anytime soon. Richard Dent, Hall of Fame, 203rd in the draft.
Wow. He had bad teeth, though. Bad teeth. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
That's why they drafted him.
They drafted him because he had bad teeth.
They drafted him, yeah, exactly. Because
you need to come into the league, son. We're going to send you to the dentist.
They looked at him, and he was...
John doesn't believe it either.
He was an excellent player, but he was small. When they investigated it, they said he had a mouthful of terrible teeth, so he had a hard time eating. So they fixed his teeth, and he became a big boy and obviously a Hall of Famer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Little known facts.
Yep.
Little known facts. Mark Bortz. Remember Mark Bortz?
Yeah.
2-time Pro Bowler, 12-year career. He was drafted 219th.
Well, they didn't know which side of the ball he was going to play.
They weren't sure which side of the ball he was going to play on. Let's see. I think that was the last of the Hall of Famers that I saw on here. So it's interesting the way that some of the numbers. You asked who was the best 256th? Linebacker Art Stringer played for the Oilers. He had 4 picks and 17 starts over a 5-year career. Don Mikowski was 255th.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was just interesting. Interesting seeing some of the names and seeing some of the people, and start to wonder.
Well,
who's going to be added to the list this year with the draft?
Interesting. Yeah. You know, I when you mentioned this subject, I kept thinking of Bart Starr, who was
splashing
17th.
everywhere. Sorry, John, I got coffee on you. Yeah, okay.
He was a 17th round draft choice.
Bart Starr was a 17th round draft choice. That's right.
And really, it's amazing that I guess the fact that you had 20 rounds of a draft maybe made this less amazing, but he had a very spotty career at the University of Alabama. And Jim,
I just made a mess.
You made John get up
I just
Look
made
at
a
it.
mess. No, now he's
Ah,
going to
now
pour
he's
more.
going to pour more coffee.
Now
so
he's
you
going to
can
pour
make
more
of a
coffee
mess.
so I can make a bigger mess. I just spilled coffee all over here. It'll dry. Okay.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Jen.
Jim, don't you think it's interesting though? What makes a thanks, Jen? What makes my hats off to the guys who watch these players and then come up with some of these gems because what is it? I'm curious. You have where was Jerry Rice drafted, or is he not on that list?
He was. I saw his name on the list. Jerry Rice was drafted 16th.
Okay.
Troy Polamalu was also drafted 16th.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought Jerry Rice coming into the league he was from a really small college, Mississippi Valley State, I think.
Yeah.
And I think there was some questions about his speed even. But he disproved a lot of that. I like the Mike Ditka theory. Are you a football player, or you just look good in the combine? Can you run the 40 fast and do a lot of bench presses and have a nice vertical leap, or can you really play football?
When did the combine come about? When did that start?
I don't know, but I wish it would go away.
I remember how revolutionary it was when they had the initial scouting organization that got, you remember
Blessed OV.
Blessed OV.
Yeah.
It was the Bears, Lions, Eagles, Steelers. And
I don't know what the O was for.
Yeah. Oilers?
I don't know. Not
if
sure.
If they were part of it. But that was thought of as revolutionary.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I have to say, again, can you actually play the game of football? I mean, when I start to, it really becomes confusing reading these draft previews because all of the writers are into all of this garbage. The 40-yard dash. You know what? When was the last time you saw a pro football player run 40 yards unmolested? I mean, what is the point? Okay, I understand the point is how fast you really are.
Right.
But how often does that come into play?
Right.
How about a defensive lineman?
I was just about to say, you were talking the issue of 230-pound offensive linemen back in the 60s, and maybe a 270-pound guard.
Mm-hmm.
The defensive lineman was a big deal back then.
Right.
Now you've got 290-pound offensive linemen who can run a 4.8 40. Mm-hmm. How many times does an offensive lineman need to run a 4.8 40?
Well, I think the ideal is the offensive, or you said offensive lineman?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say reverse it and say you put
Even
those
the
same
other way
numbers on a
around.
defensive lineman.
Right.
The object is for him never to run 40 yards because his object is to stuff the run right at the line.
Right.
Okay. If he's chasing around 40 yards very often, things aren't going too well.
Right. By the way, I'm just glancing down, going back to our subject before. Two names popped out on this list here that of the greatest NFL draft picks. Dwight Clark was taken 249th.
Well, did you ever read the book, The Catch?
No.
Oh, man, that book is well worth reading. You know how he actually was discovered? They were working, they were deciding who they're going to draft. They wanted to draft the QB.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve Fuller was one of the possibilities. So
Mm-hmm.
Steve Fuller and Dwight Clark were roommates. So they're going to work Steve Fuller out, but they needed somebody to catch the passes. So Dwight Clark he was in his dorm room, or his apartment, whichever it was almost ready to go, was going to walk out the door to go to the beach or whatever. Phone rings, he answers it. And it was Bill Walsh or somebody from the 49ers and said, Dwight, we're going to work Steve Fuller out. We want somebody to catch the passes. Would you be willing to participate in the workout? And he said he would. And in the workout, Clark actually impressed Walsh more than Fuller. So they ended up telling him, you know what, we may draft you.
Yeah.
And that's the story behind him being drafted by the 49ers.
Two-time Pro Bowler, 48 career touchdowns, as well as an unforgettable one in the playoffs. A couple of other names here on this list down near the end. Scott Studwell had a good long career in Minnesota as a linebacker. He was 250th.
Real good, very good player.
Marcus Colston, 6-time 1,000-yard receiver, has never made a Pro Bowl, but only former Steelers left tackle John Jackson is close to him in this spot. He was drafted 252nd. Interesting. It was just interesting.
That's for sure.
You look at some of these players and you think about, wow, he must have been, real stud. Brett Favre was drafted 33rd. Mike Singletary was drafted in 38th.
You know what I think a tough thing is in terms of drafting is, though, Jim? How do you say you take a guy like a Jerry Rice from a Mississippi Valley State, or even Richard Dent, Tennessee State, Harry Carson, South Carolina State, Harlan Hill, Florence State Teachers College. So you're playing competition that is obviously not as good as if you're from the Big Ten or the Southeast Conference or wherever. So how does one who's evaluating, how do you make those evaluations? How do you know that a guy from Florence State Teachers College can make the hop, even though he looks good there? How do you know he can make the jump into the pros?
No, you don't. You really.
It's an interesting thing. Scouting is all important, but it's a very inexact science. And the good ones, again, you have to know what a football player looks like. How is this guy going to shape up? I know Harry Carson. I believe he's South Carolina State. And at the time that Harry Carson was in college, this was when the black colleges were sort of waning. I mean, at one time, probably in the 60s, early 70s, the all black universities were being really, really looked at now by the pros. But then when all the other conferences sort of opened up for the black players, then those schools who were all black sort of their fortunes sort of waned.
Grambling, specifically.
Harry Carson came out of there at a sort of a strange time, and but another excellent player.
Yeah. It was just interesting looking at some of this and thinking about where some of these players came from, and you think, wow, that's when he was drafted. I would have thought he would have been drafted higher than that. Terrell Owens was drafted 89th.
Terrell Owens, 88. But I don't even, was he a UCLA guy? I'm not sure where
I don't
he
even
came
remember
from.
where he went.
I was going to say, I mean,
Russell Wilson was drafted 75th.
Yeah.
I mean, the rap on him was his size.
His size. Which, I think when it comes to some of these positions, especially quarterback, I can go back to the days of when we were kids, and Roman Gabriel was going to be the prototype of your new NFL quarterback. Well, that's never really happened. Guys of all kinds of sizes have been quarterbacks since then, and I think either you're a quarterback or you're not. To me personally, I was thinking about this the other day. People criticize Jay Cutler. I understand why, but I'm thinking even in my best day, just to get back there and try to look through that rush and
do your reads and all that,
complete a pass, very difficult. These guys are, again, I prefer the old school player, but still, I'm very respectful of the guys today because these aren't. It's not that easy to get where they're at, and it's not that. Again, what did I text you the other day, Jim? My hat's off to any of these guys who really become really, really good pros because it's not that easy.
It's not an easy task to do.
No.
Speaking of guys who were pros, or am I just thinking of this? Did Eddie LeBaron pass away recently?
I think he did.
Yeah. Talk about a guy who wasn't very big.
Oh my God! The little magician.
The little magician.
The little general.
The little general. He was like 5'7",
something like
5'6", 5'7".
He was a guy too.
Talk about the old days here as we ramble back.
I mean, there was a guy who never played with a really good team, so you can imagine he's a small guy and he's getting crunched because he was with the Redskins for most of his career.
Yeah.
And then was talked into coming out of retirement to play for the original Cowboys.
Played for the original Cowboys.
And that was no picnic either.
Played for a team that lost all their games that year, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they might have tied one.
They might have tied one, but talk about a guy who had a long career and wasn't very big. So there was no such thing as a prototypical quarterback. And by the way, when you brought up Roman Gabriel, he made one really bad movie too. It was a Western.
Yeah,
he played an Indian.
Yeah, that's right. Wasn't it a John Wayne film?
It was a John Wayne Western.
Yeah.
I can't think of the name of it, but he was in it, and he was really bad.
I don't think he said much, did he?
I think he had some lines, but, then again, when you got that Duke.
The Duke, yeah.
You got the Duke. You don't need to say much of anything. That's right, partner. All right. Hey, I think we're done. John, thank you. Thank you both for pulling me out of my mood when I walked in here today. It was fun to sit down and get into some other things and talk about stuff. It's the 15th as this thing is playing. If you haven't gotten your tax return done, please don't bother me. I don't want to talk to you. I've had enough taxes.
That's good.
I still have some people I have to put on an extension. Time for us to wrap it up. Thanks to the doctor, the Dials, for putting up with our nonsense once again. Thanks to my partner, Rich. Once again, you pulled me out of my funky mood when I walked in the door. And we had some fun today. Thanks for listening. We will see you again next time. We're out of here. We are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, April the 15th, the year of our Lord, 2015, on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager of WRHS FM Norwich, Mr. Kevin Zeflik, and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is John Chiconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, April the 14th, the year 2015. Until next time, be safe and thanks for listening. Have a good day. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois.